Welcome to the Flyboy Podcast, where we bring you just one thing, cool flying stories. I'm your host, David Moore, and today I'll be talking with Mark Dougherty. Mark spent almost 30 years in the U.S. Air Force. He's flown more than 2,000 hours in the F-4 Phantom, 1,000 hours in the F-16 Falcon, 500 hours in the A-7 Corsair, and he has more than 200 flight hours in the F-117 Nighthawk. And in fact, Mark was one of the very first pilots to fly the F-117. He is bandit number 168, which means, since they started numbering the bandits at 150 to keep the number flying a secret, that he is, in fact, one of the first 20 Air Force pilots to fly the jet. So, with that, let's jump into talking about flying. What is your favorite flying memory?
Well, there's probably 1,000 of them, but almost 30 years of flying successfully without breaking a jet or me was probably, in the big picture, my happiest. But the one you and I talked about before was over in Germany. I was in 2 assignments over there, Bitburg and then Ramstein. And at Ramstein we had U-Safety Stan Val was there doing an over-the-shoulder check ride for my CFI, and I was getting my first check ride in the F4 at Ramstein in a non-nuke, non-air-to-air, but a ground attack sort of role. And we were going to go over and hit a target in the near the East German border in low-fly 7. And it was a U.S. Army AAA air defense missile site. And we were battling weather. We had tried this a couple times. This was going to be my check ride. I was pretty excited about that, and we headed out. And I was flying a 2-ship lead and made it to the no-fly zone under low-fly 7 near the border in the weather, and popped up, rolled out, and when I could finally see what I was looking at, my pipper was over a AAA site with a bunch of surprised-looking Army guys looking up at me. And so we met the requirements that we pulled off, and the CFI from U-Safety said, "Let's go home." So so we went home, and check ride Q1. So it was always good when you get a good score on a check ride. But when the weather over there can be so foul, and it can spoil almost anything, but it worked out that day.
Mark, what was the most challenging sortie you ever flew?
The one that left a pretty important dent in my brain was a cross-country, believe it or not, from Homestead to Texas. And
really?
I was new to Homestead, just finished flying F4Es for 5 years in Germany and Seymour Johnson. I came down to be an IP at Homestead, and I hadn't been checked out yet, but a guy was going cross-country to George in an F4, and my twin brother, was flying F4s over at George, so I said, I'll go. So I jumped in the trunk of the F4D, which according to the guys that flew the D model, it manufactured fuel compared to the slatted E. So I had in my possession a handheld computer, my very first one, and I was going to figure out our fuel mileage and winds and all that kind of stuff, and off we went. But it wasn't until 10:30 at night on a Friday, because the airplane had to fly twice, and then it had to get repaired. They wouldn't let us in those days fly across country until it had flown a couple operational sorties. So off we went at 10:30 at night and entered the weather over the Gulf, and the winds were forecast to be 50 knots, and they were 100 to 150 knots.
Wow.
INS went Tango uniform. You can explain that to your viewers later. And we thought with the winds that were the way they were, we better divert into the panhandle of Florida. So we looked at Eglin and Pensacola and some other bases up there, but they were iced in. They wouldn't accept anybody. So we kept legging it into Texas, and the winds were strong, and the gas was not as good as we thought it would be. We were at as high as we could get, and we finally got over Ellington Field, made a decision to continue to Kelly, which was our destination base. We probably should have spun into Ellington, but it was closed for the night. It was Thanksgiving weekend, and so we kept into Kelly, and for about the next 30 to 40 minutes, I was preparing the cockpit to jump out because the gas was so slim. R.L. Penn and I, he was in the front seat, I was in the back, and we were finally pulled one engine back to idle, the other one just to keep us cruising, and we descended that way into Kelly Air Force Base, landed, used the high-speed taxi into the chocks shut it down, and I got off the airplane and chalked the airplane. The TA guys, the sleepy TA guys, showed up in their fuel truck, not happy that we were there around midnight, fueled us up, and we took, as I recall, 20,700 pounds of gas, which was the maximum number of pounds of gas you can put in a 3-bag F4D. Wow. So after the guys left, we thanked them profusely, and we ripped the receipt in half. It was in the sleeve in the 781, and I ate half of it, and he ate the other half. Then we went to the BOQ and bought a 6-pack of miniature scotches and toasted ourselves for surviving. We really thought we were gonna get wet, cold, and maybe worse that night.
Wow.
Bad.
Wow. Well,
I ended up writing an article for. It's called Any Mouse, which was an anonymous article you could write in the safety magazine to describe what we had done, just for other people to learn. Don't do that.
Indeed.
Right.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you took care of the paperwork there at the end of the sortie.
Yeah.
So good on
exactly. Yeah, that was an inspired solution.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a moment ago that you had an identical twin brother, and the fact that you both grew up to be Air Force pilots, and you both wound up flying the F4. How did that happen?
We were sons of an Air Force pilot, which will get you. It gets in your blood early, and I sent you a picture of my brother and me at the ramp at Davis-Monthan back in the mid-'50s when my dad and his squadron just returned in their B-47s from Guam after a 6-month deployment. And we thought, okay, this is the cat's ass, and it never left me. And so in high school, we were filling out our applications to go to the Air Force Academy, which would have been a good call for my dad because it would have been less expensive. My brother went, his grades were better. He went to the prep school for a year, and then a year at the academy before he bailed out and went to LSU. I didn't get accepted. I think I used a letter D in college. I thought it sounded like it should have one. They turned me down. I went to a 4-year co-ed college and graduated a year ahead of him out of ROTC and flew F4s for a year before he did. And then he followed in my steps, I guess, and we were, we grew up dressing the same our whole life, and it turned out we did that as adults. We dressed the same, we talked the same, we looked the same. His squadron guys thought I was stuck up because I wasn't as friendly as he was, and that's the way my squadron guys felt about my twin brother because they assumed that we would both know everybody to the same level that we did. Anyway, it was a wonderful way to spend your life, and I miss him. He died when we were 38. My twin brother from melanoma, melanoma. So I get to look pretty closely every 6 months for that. Don't ignore that spot on your skin. Get it fixed.
Well, Mark, what's the worst weather you've ever flown through to land an airplane?
Every sortie in the winter at Bitburg was probably it. It's a great place to start your career, by the way, having to fight and learn to get back just to land safely. You get to where it's pretty commonplace. So after a certain period of time, you get enough hours, you can fly routinely when the weather's at 301. 300 foot is the ceiling, 1 mile in visibility. And so I think that happened more than once. And at night it's worse. It can be really ugly. When you divert to a new base, it's even worse because you're not as familiar. One day I was at Ramstein on my second tour in Europe, and Ramstein always had the best weather because it had the lowest elevation. But we were socked in that night, so they diverted us to Zweibrücken, which had higher elevation, and that was sort of weird, but off we went. Didn't have a gas to go to England where we would normally go. And I landed there after flying a PAR, precision radar approach, with a radar guy talking me down, which is what a thoughtful way to do precision approaches compared to an ILS or whatever else they're flying these days. And once I landed safely, I couldn't see the taxi. The fog was so bad, so they got to follow me to take me to the ramp. And my backseater and I got out and called the guys in the tower in the PAR shack and asked them to go to the All Ranks Club with us and celebrate with a beer, and we all toasted each other. It was really a fun, satisfying thing, so we thought that was going to be it that night. That was probably 200 and a quarter, 200 and a half, something like that, but it worked.
Wow. Well, that's great. It's funny you describe the PAR approaches, those classic ones where they say, you're on course, on glide path, a little high, a little low, left, turn right,
Right.
and all of that great stuff. I actually flew into Fort Huachuca one time in the A-10, and the precision approach controller had a stuck mic. So he was telling me, he's giving me instructions down final, and he's messing things up. And he's going, turn right 5 degrees. Oh man, I messed that up. I should have told him 10 degrees. Hog 2-1, turn left now, 25. Oh, that was too much. Oh, rats.
I bet you didn't call him to ask him for beers, huh?
I sent him a note later and said, hey, great PAR, but FYI, you were on hot mic.
Stuck. Oh, man.
Stuck mic. Yep, you were on stuck mic. So let me ask you this, Mark. What's the longest sortie you've ever flown?
I think probably 12 hours. We went overseas from the East Coast of the United States for Crested Cap every year to prove that we could deploy squadrons of fighters over to Europe. Rather than have them stationed there full time, we would deploy them back. And that was the concept that we proved every year. And so we'd go back and forth. And one year we were on the ground in England, as I recall. We had flown forward from Germany to England. Maybe we were in Germany, can't remember. It changed every year, but the tankers were certainly coming out of England, and they finally took off where we were and cleared the air long enough for us to get airborne. So off we go, and things were going well. You're going to the west. You're always going against headwinds, much stronger than when you're going to the east. And one of the guys had some problems, and I had to escort him in to New Hampshire, to Pease Air Force Base, there, while everybody else turned down to Seymour Johnson. So I limped along with him, put a couple extra hours on the mission. He landed safely at Pease, and I skedaddled back down to Seymour Johnson and landed. Everybody was gone. The party was over. The crew chiefs sort of showed up and said, "Who's this guy?" I climbed off the airplane. Someone put a ladder up, and I was getting ready to climb off, but they were there, so I handed my piddle packs to them, which is normal procedure, and it turned out to be the squadron commander's wife, and I'm sorry about that to this day, but she understood it. But I went to the after party and got an extra beer, I think, and had fun. But it was a long hike, and but in a F4, when you're sitting up straight, it's even longer. Mm-hmm. An F-16, when you're on a long mission, you just sit back in the seat and it's comfortable. But the F4 was crippling almost. A-7 was the same way.
Yeah. But tell me, having flown the F-16, the F-4, the F-117, and A-7, tell me how those jets handled differently. What was it like flying each of them, and was there one you liked more than the other, and if so, why?
I flew the F-4 the most, and it was my first girlfriend, and I love her to this day. You can't get any better association with an airplane than you can when you fly it for a couple thousand hours. Yeah. I was good at it because I didn't have any other choice, and I apparently am analog because I was satisfied with the way the F-4 worked, handled, and it was instrumented. When I changed to the F-117 after that, first we flew the A-7, which was there to provide a sort of hoodwink the bad guys, wonder what we're doing. Well, we said we're doing A-7 avionics checkout. In the meantime, we were flying F-117s. They were hidden uprange. The A-7 taught me about what an airplane is capable of with fantastic avionics. It took 8 miracles to occur to make them all work in the A-7 at once, but when they did, it was awesome. And then the F-117 was like that, but you were by yourself at night going at a pretty good pace. You didn't have to fly in a formation. You weren't diving at the ground. So it was a good learning experience, even though I only got 200 hours or so in the airplane. I learned it pretty fast. And then when I got to the F-16, that was when I realized that it was for younger men. You know, I finally learned it, but it took me probably, instead of 300 or 400 hours to get better at it, it took 600 or 700 hours to get really proficient, particularly with the avionics. I remember very distinctly going, I don't know what this is telling me, but I didn't hit the ground. I managed to do things and didn't get embarrassed too much, but I was a lieutenant colonel and a colonel by then, so they expected some tomfoolery from us. But it was fun, and it was Bobby by far the most capable airplane I've ever flown or ever will fly. Yeah. So it's a sweet memory flying the F-16, a magnificent airplane.
So let's assume for just a moment that the statute of limitations has run out. Was there ever a time when you deliberately broke the rules to either fly too low or buzz someone's house or fly someplace you weren't supposed to?
Well, allegedly, I went to a fraternity reunion back at my college in Miami of Ohio, and I landed at Wright Pat, and I took my backseater with me to my reunion, and it was fun. Football parties at the fraternity house, that kind of stuff, and then as we were getting ready to leave to go pick up the airplane the next morning, that evening as we were closing up shop, somebody said, "Why don't you come buzz the house?" And I thought, no, inappropriate, shouldn't be able to do that. But the idea sort of caught, and my backseater and I both agreed that it might be appropriate. So we launched out of Wright-Patterson and went down to a lake that's near the campus. I called my buddy, who was before I took off, who said he would be on the porch looking for me. So I went over the campus at a reasonable altitude. He saw me, and then I came by and sort of buzzed the house. And I knew that this was probably the dumbest thing I'd ever done, but I sort of wanted a little payback for all the folks that used to see you in your Air Force ROTC uniform on campus and spit on you, tell you ROTC off campus, all that kind of stuff. And so did one pass by pretty fast, pretty memorable, and 50 years later the boys are still talking about it. So that's an alleged story.
An alleged
right.
story.
That's right.
I understand. Thank you. So you mentioned your twin brother tragically had passed. Beyond that, we know flying can be dangerous. Can you tell me about some of the other friends you've lost along the way?
I started by saying my brother was dying of cancer while he was flying F-15s was the most significant. He had the melanoma. It was removed. He went back on flying status, and then a couple of years later died of cancer. And then when I was flying the F-117, living with guys 24/7 all the time, and one of my best friends and my flight commander and MU-2 pilot, Paul Watson, died in an A-7 accident. That was tragic. I'm still in contact with his sister and his relatives. Paul was a naturalized American citizen, had a thick English accent, and you talk about putting off. People didn't know how to quite take that when we came in a MU-2 with a military call sign, the civilian clothes, and a guy with a British accent. Then Dutch Riffler died also in an A-7. It was a cover, as you know, for the F-117. And then Dave McLeod later, who was there in the unit with us in the staff, who was a 3-star, died in a Yak-54 up in Alaska later, which just breaks your heart. And his wife Ann and my sister are best friends, and we still talk about him today. So I hate losing anybody, but I really hated losing the guys that I spent so much time with and were so close with on many assignments.
Indeed,
that's part of the deal, I guess.
Yeah, sadly, yes.
Yes, it is.
So I understand one time you flew an F-4 in your socks without boots. Is that true? We sat alert at Homestead back in the day, and this is in the early 80s. And our biggest threat were airplanes out of South America coming into the swamps just north of us at Homestead, dropping off drugs. So we were on alert and got scrambled one night
And I was looking for my boots, and I couldn't find my boots, so I paddled out to the airplane in my stocking feet. By the time I got there, the socks were longer than my lower leg. Flew in crappy weather, trying to find a C-54 with no lights going into the Everglades. And we were just about to catch him in the scud layer. He was going much slower than we were, so our two-ship was doing a circular approach to keep him in contact. Then we had to bail out because we were entering the Miami TCA, Terminal Control Authority area around the airport, and then went around that and found him over the Everglades. By then he had landed. But you know, the story doesn't end there, because I landed and asked my backseater, do you know where my boots were? And apparently I had told him the story the day before, how we used to fill guys' boots up with water and put them in the freezer over in Germany and England. And that's what they did. And we were scrambled, and I, in my stocking feet, it's not a comfortable thing pushing on the rudders in an F4 when your socks are just about off. And that's what I remember about the frustration of not being able to do anything except, say there's a blacked up cargo airplane probably moving drugs, and what do you want us to do about it? And also thinking about my stocking feet.
Indeed.
We had a guy on that same alert thing a couple of days or weeks later shot down a blimp that had gotten loose. Seek Skyhook radar blimp out of the Keys had shot it down with an AIM-7 some weeks later, and we were surprised as hell that the AIM-7 worked and shot the blimp out of the sky because it was up in the airways. Pretty interesting times there at Homestead.
Indeed. Until I remember going through water survival there, and then sadly Hurricane Andrew, I remember, came through and just devastated South Florida and wiped out the base and the city and so much.
I went through water survival down there, and an old guy was going through water survival with an old guy, lieutenant colonel. We were all lieutenants, and you're supposed to push away from the parachute and drop in the water. He did this and undid his harness, and he fell into the water, so he didn't pass the test. He survived, but he didn't pass the course.
So when you talk to young people who say they're interested in learning to fly, what advice do you give them?
I do that quite a bit now. I'm the flight captain at our local today in Flight 13 here in San Diego, and we have young Air Force and Navy ROTC midshipmen and cadets all the time getting scholarships from us to fly up to Solo to keep them interested in flying and make them go and do what we did, which is go to pilot training either for the Navy, the Marine Corps, or the Air Force. And we are very interested in keeping manned fighters manned and keeping young people interested in aviation. We think that's one of the biggest advantages we have in the United States, as long as we have the budget to pay for the new airplanes and the upgrades and that kind of stuff. And so it's easy to sell because they like being around us. As odd as it sounds, they come out and hang out with the old people and listen to war stories. And we try to use our best judgment when we tell the stories, but they know there's something there because we have organizations like the Dedayans, of military flyers who want to hang around and talk about how great we once were. So I've been to commissionings on the USS Midway here in San Diego Harbor for midshipmen. We've had ROTC students go to pilot training out of here, and as long as you have a real address for them instead of an EDU address, you can track them and see how they're doing and how they're progressing in the Navy, the Marine Corps, and the Air Force. So it's a lot of fun, and I tell them that you want to do this because you need to learn a trade. If you're going to learn a trade and you can dress in white socks and a one-piece jumpsuit and not get too dirty, then flying is a good trade, and it'll pay you well, and it'll serve you well for the rest of your life. Plus, the chicks dig it, and the guys resonate by that. The girls not so much.
Okay, here's my last question. How important is being a pilot to your identity, to your sense of who you are?
Since I don't know anything different, it's probably the most important thing. It's probably faded over time, but I know that it served me well when I was in the Air Force. with my compatriots. It served me well in joint arenas, in command positions and staff positions around the joint staff, the different staffs, and it gives you an insight into what's possible out there around the globe, not just in the near future, the near distance. It enables everything: maneuver warfare, shipping, all those things that are important. And I think we ought to recognize that. And I share that with young people and say, you can't be part of anything more important than that. And once you're finished with it, it pays well to go other places with it, and the memories are absolutely outstanding. So do it, enjoy it, and you will never regret it.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate you joining us today. You've been listening to the Flyboy Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by our parent organization, the Flyboy Lab. The mission of the Flyboy Lab is to elevate awareness and appreciation of aviators, their service, sacrifices, and contributions. Hopefully we've fulfilled that mission today. New episodes of the Flyboy Podcast drop every Thursday morning, and you can find our previous episodes on our website, theflyboypodcast.com. Until our next sortie, push the Mach, use the vertical, and fly safe.